Today I'm going to show you one of my favorite ways to cook mallards is with the skin on. So I like to breast them out and leave the skin on. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I haven't really seen, it's not very common practice amongst hunters. It is a very common practice with people that go and buy a mallard from the grocery store. And the reason why I like doing this is because of the fat. I love mallard fat. I like it more than the meat itself, actually, which is hard to believe because I really enjoy the meat. So how do we tell how much fat is actually on the bird? Is it actually worth the additional effort of butterflying the breasts out with the skin on? And I usually only save that for times when there's, a decent amount of fat on the bird. And then once later in the season, and there's tons and tons of fat on these birds, I will then take the whole bird and roast it, and then be able to render all the fat off of the bird later after I've removed the meat. But a quick and easy way to see how much fat is actually on the bird is by just the skin color. So you can see in areas where there's lots of movement, there is hardly any fat. We're actually seeing the muscle through the skin. And so as we can imagine the bird flying, fat would inhibit that movement. So through evolution, the fat does not get displaced in these areas. So we can actually see there's very little fat. And as we move onto the top of the breast, where movement would not be inhibited, kind of like humans where we have fat usually put onto our stomachs, that's an area where there's not a lot of movement, right? So it's essentially the same thing. But we can see the color change, right? No fat, fat. And that's all I really do to assess if the bird has enough fat on it. If they have this nice, rich, it's not quite white, but it's not quite yellow. It's some kind of off-white, off-yellow. I don't even know what color. You can comment below what you think what that kind of color is. And actually, I've cut the skin just a little bit when I was plucking, and we can see that there's tons of fat right there. So this is a perfect bird to butterfly out and use that technique on. Now, when we start to see fat on the legs right here, and basically what happens is this whole exterior of the bird right here, and on the back, and on the belly of the bird becomes bulging. Like, you can actually see that there's really less features on the bird, so we can't really see this bone right here. The legs are encased in fat. That is a prime bird to pluck the entire bird and just use the whole thing whole and roast it. Where this bird, we can still see that there's areas where there's not that much fat yet. So this is a great bird to butterfly. And that's how I pick and choose which birds I use different techniques on. And I'll show you what the fat looks like. I went a little too aggressive with plucking the bird, and I ripped the skin a little bit. So as the skin's peeled back, we can see that there's fat right here. And this is actually a delicacy. It's very, very good. You can imagine that essentially the meat is now wrapped in fat, and the skin's protecting it when I cook the duck. So it just turns out really good. I don't actually like the skin itself. I usually just give it to the dog, but I love the fat, love the meat. So I'm going to show you. It's really quick. There's a little bit more to it than just breasting it out, but it's not too much more than that. So here's a couple of mallards that I shot yesterday morning. I like to let my birds sit for at least a day or two if I can. If it's too warm, then you really can't let them sit for more than a few hours, especially when you
have gut shot them. You know, the stomach fluids contain bacteria and enzymes that quicken the rate of decay of the meat. So, but these birds, it's been cool. It dropped down to almost freezing last night, and they're not too badly shot. There's a couple of gut shot wounds, but nothing too bad. So I let them sit for a day, and I've plucked them, and I've also burned off all the little feathers. And so we have just nice clean skin here. Just like what you'd find in the grocery store with a farm mallard. So I like to butterfly it, meaning that the two breasts right here stay together. They're connected by the skin right here. So I'll get the camera in here and we can start to flay them out. I turn the bird on its side, and I kind of feel. So I can feel the rib cage, which is right below the skin here. And then there's some muscles on the back. And I can feel there's a bulge right here. I'm kind of pinching it with my fingers here. And that's the breast. So I'm feeling with my thumb, and I'm pushing the breast up off of the ribs as best as I can without actually cutting into the bird. And I'm feeling where the breast essentially is disconnected from the ribs. So then I take my knife, and so now I'm pushing the muscle up, and I'm coming right behind my thumb, and I'm cutting in. See, just like that. So now when I open it up, we just see ribs. Use my fingers again to find that line, and I cut down towards the ribs, not through the ribs, feeling with my knife. It's very important to have a sharp knife to help with this. And I'm cutting away from the breast like this. I'm pulling the meat away from my knife. So as I'm cutting, the meat pulls away, and I go right to the sternum, right here. The bone that's dividing the two breasts. And holding the wing back, I cut up. See how the wing just peeled back like that? And going down what we would call the wishbone. And so now I'm holding the one of the sides of the breast in one hand, and I'm using my knife to just slice the meat away, trying to waste as little as I can until I get to the very top. So now we can see the top of the sternum right here. And I'm cutting the top of the bone, but not through the skin. And so now I'm actually on the other side. And now I can take my knife and slice down. And then just like I would normally take a breast out, I would come down the ribs like this. And we can see all this amazing fat right here. I'm going to try to save as much as I can. Coming up and slicing away like that. And so now we have a butterfly of the two breasts here. And we can do so many things with this. We can wrap it like this. We can stuff them. Just so many options with this, and essentially we've wrapped them in skin and fat, which a lot of people use bacon, and bacon's essentially just doing the same thing that I'm doing right here, but we're preserving all this amazing fat that the bird has to offer. And so I don't stop there. So I also like to take the legs as well. See, I went a little too gung-ho when I was breasting it out, and I cut a little too far, but that's okay. We still have plenty of fat, plenty of skin to fry these up with. And so how I like to take the legs off of the ducks is I like to essentially bend the leg back, as we can see here. And here this isn't anatomically correct, but we'll call this the kneecap. And so I've bent the kneecap so the legs are straight. And so what's happening is there's tension. We can kind of picture a tendon as a piece of rope. Well, it's a lot easier to cut a piece of rope when there's tension. So now I've created tension through use of gravity and displacement weight of this leg here. And I cut in. So now I've just cut the top tendon. And so the leg is now a little bit more flexible. I pop it out of socket. So now that it's popped out of socket, I can easily slice the foot right off. And so now we have almost a finish. There's a little bit of pin feathers here that I'll clean up later. But we have almost a finished leg here that I can just put away for storage. And again, the same thing on the other side. Where I cut down, pop the leg out of the pelvic socket, do a little bit more cleaning up. Again, slice the tendon, pop out a socket, right down, just like that. I hardly dull my knife when I do that. Where other methods of actually cutting through the bone will dramatically dull your knife very quickly. And that's it. The carcass is now ready to discard. There's not a lot left on the bird. I'll probably pull off a couple of these little meat scraps that I missed. That actually, the muscle lies underneath we'll call it the wishbone, just for simplicity's sake. I'll cut that out for Remy as a little snack, and discard the carcass appropriately. Now later in the season, within about the next 2-3 weeks here, I'll start to pluck the birds whole. That's because they're just loaded with fat, and I don't want to waste any of that. So I'll bake the birds, I'll take the meat off, and then I'll render the fat. And I'll show you this in another video that I'll link. It should be coming up in the video right now. And so I'll render that fat, and I love using that fat to cook anything. It makes the food just amazing. It adds a very earthy, rich depth to any food that I cook with it, and I love it. Love mallard fat. So that's it. That's how I do a lot of birds. Right now is about the perfect time for this. You don't want to do this when the bird has too many pin feathers. Welcome to the kitchen. Remy is absolutely losing his mind. He won't stop bothering me. He keeps saying, let's go to Arkansas. I know there's birds down in Arkansas right now. I can't afford it, bud. I can't afford to go to Arkansas. No, I can't go to Texas either. I can't do it. I just can't do it. He's going nuts. There's no birds around. They're all gone. I swear. I know the season has an end. He won't stop. He just is relentless over there. Anyways, so we're going to take these butterfly fillets and do some experimentation with them. I got this idea from an Italian dish called porchetta, which is pork that's stuffed with Italian herbs. and taking the classic duck poppers, which is jalapeno stuffed with duck and cream cheese, and then wrapped in bacon. And we're going to take those butterfly fillets and stuff them with jalapenos and goat cheese. Now, if you're not a big fan of goat cheese, you're welcome to use cream cheese. I just love goat cheese. I love the tanginess of it, and it's just extremely creamy. But cream cheese will work just fine. And it's a very simple recipe. I haven't tried it yet. We'll see how it turns out. I'm guessing it's going to be good. I mean, anytime you have duck fat, some sort of cheese, and jalapenos, I think it's just a recipe for success. So here we go. We're going to try it out. Alright, so we have our duck breast here, some goat cheese, and jalapenos that I think this is called julienne cut. We'll just call it French fry cut. I think looks like a jalapeno French fry to me. So I have a cast iron pan here heating up. I would recommend using cast iron, or you could even use a grill, because we want to crisp the skin on the outside. So we need something that can handle a lot of heat. And we want to grease the pan first. I have some venison lard here that I've smoked, and I highly recommend doing this. It is incredible. The smoky, rich flavor of the lard penetrates any meal that you use it with, and it just adds a extra dimension to the food. So we want a fair amount in the pan, just to get things started here. That's a little bit too much. Essentially, we just want a light coating on the outside of the pan, because we have to remember that there's lots of fat underneath these breasts, like attached to the skin, and once we're cooking, that'll render out of the meal and grease the pan. So we don't want a ton. We don't want to start deep frying. And so we want to make sure that the skin and the meat are dry, and we'll just lightly season both sides with some salt. I like a lot of salt on the outside. This helps season and also helps pull any remaining moisture on the outside, and that will help crisp things up. So a healthy layer on the inside as well. And just some pepper on the inside, not the outside. We don't want to blacken the outside. Just a light coating like that. A couple of these French fries. Like so. And I'm using about, I would say 2-3 tablespoons of, two tablespoons of goat cheese. Just like that. Alright, and now we just need to wrap everything up. You can use cooking twine. I'm just going to use some wire here. I just have it around the house, and it works just fine. And just simply cutting, just having 8-inch sections, and just simply tightening it up like that. Now we want it fairly tight, but not so much that it would actually push out any of the juices. We want it snug, but not overly tight. So something like that. And so we want our pan hot. And as you can see that the smoke's coming off of the pan, that means it's too hot. We're actually reaching a burning point with the oil, and that'll translate into actually burning the flesh of the duck, and we don't want that. Then we just gently take the duck and set it into the pan like that. Alright, it should be just about ready. Beautiful crisp there. We'll flip it over. So it's coming out to be about 8 minutes per side. All right, the duck is looking beautiful. I am way too tall. So the duck is out of the pan, but it is so crucial to let it sit. The kind of wild game that you cook should always sit and let to rest. And what this does is allow the meat to retain the juices by cooling down. And that's so crucial because with wild game we don't have the luxury of having fat infused within the meat. That extra fat within domestic meat almost acts like a buffer and allows for more mistakes with the meat, and we don't have that luxury with wild game. So we need to be cautious about retention of those juices. So we'll just let this sit for about 5 minutes and then we'll cut into it. So while the duck is cooling down, I'm going to make a quick gravy with all the drippings that are in the pan. So gravy is super easy to make. All you need is some flour and some fat. And that's about it. A little bit of heat, not a lot. And some water as well. So I've let the pan cool down a little bit, and I'm going to add some water to it. We want to be careful here. And we're adding the water. We don't want all that grease to explode, so it has cooled down. I'll increase the heat again. Going up to a medium heat for now, just to get everything up to a slight boil. And while that's warming up, we'll just add some flour, just a little bit by a little bit as we stir. And we want to make sure that we scrape the pan as we're doing this, getting all the charred remains, because that'll add a flavor to our gravy. And just a little bit, I'm going to turn the heat back down. As you can see, it's starting to boil. We don't want it to actually boil. Just like that. Being as fast as we can with the whisk. And we can start to see that it's thickening up. Just like that. A little bit more flour. And there we go. We have a beautiful gravy that we made from the drippings. That's going to go on top of the duck. Alright. Our duck is rested for about 5 minutes here. Cut the wires off. Being as delicate as I can. Again, we want to retain all the juices. And the duck is beautifully cooked. Medium rare, perfect cook for waterfowl. I do eat waterfowl tartare, however, it is more gamey that way. And I don't recommend it for, say, somebody that's just starting off with eating wild game, because it has a very strong flavor to it. But this is perfect. Of course, with that beautiful gravy we made. And there we go. Alright, I'll give it a taste test here. Just right off the bat, it just looks amazing. The meat turned out really well. The skin is nice and crispy, and I'm very hopeful that all this will pair together really nicely. Wow. The meat is so tender. There's a hint of wild game, but with that rich, creamy, tangy flavor of the goat cheese and that nice pop from the jalapenos, it all just comes together so well. And the gravy on top is so rich but so mild. It's just perfect. I mean, honestly, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like you could serve this at any restaurant. I mean, obviously a little bit fancier. You wouldn't be getting served by a dude in plaid, like, honestly. But I would pair this with any meal at any restaurant. I mean, it's perfectly balanced. It's very rich, but so is the duck. So it's perfectly balanced. And then you get that tang, that zip from the jalapenos. Really unbelievable. I highly recommend it. I'm not just saying that because I'm making this video. It's very good. Wow. What I love about this dish is that it allows the duck to be at the forefront, where you do get that duck flavor, that wild game flavor, and then everything comes right behind it, and it just soothes out everything where it's not over pungent and it's just so well balanced. And of course, it's just tender. Then every once in a while, you get a little crunch from the skin. Mmm, very incredible. I think this just became my new favorite way to cook waterfowl. It's hard to top jalapeno poppers because anything with bacon is, of course, going to be good. But just everything about this, and then the fact that we're using the fat from the duck, makes it that much better. And as you can see from this film, it really wasn't any extra work. That once you get used to the butterfly fillet technique, it can be easily done in succession. And you could pan fry multiple breasts at once, making just an incredible meal. And then the gravy on top of it, super easy. That's what I love about this recipe, is that it's super easy and so good. I mean, it's incredible, and it'll just blow everybody's mind away. Like, everything about it is just so well balanced, so rich. I would serve this to anybody. Anybody. Even somebody that hasn't ever eaten wild game before, I think they would love it. And I think it would sell them on wild game. So, thanks for watching this film. I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And in the comments section, let me know what else you'd like to see. We're heading into the winter here. I'm just wrapping up whitetail deer season. I'm hoping to at least get a doe. I really need the meat in my freezer. Otherwise, I'm going to have to rely on waterfowl and fish this coming ice season. So don't forget to subscribe. There's going to be whitetail deer hunting. Even if I don't shoot one, I'll at least film it. Those are going to be ice fishing, winter camping, and of course more cooking videos to come. And then next summer, we're going to do all kinds of exploration of Saskatchewan. So subscribe, stay tuned, and thanks for the support.